I don't think so. We have seen a lot of murder mysteries coming in.
It's what you want to see, na?
That's true.
Come across your eyes.
Okay,
So why don't we have
so
our introduction with each other? Yeah, maybe we just
yeah,
start.
so I will introduce. I'll just take a couple of minutes to introduce, and then we'll start with the panel.
Thank you.
So, welcome to session one on day two of Let's Talk About Literature, an online lit fest being organized by Flipping Pages and Book Your Book. Before introducing the panelists and the session, let me take a moment to introduce the organizers. Flipping Pages is a traditional publisher as well as a PR company for authors, while Book Your Books is a platform which helps writers sell their books in an affordable manner and helps reach them a far wider audience. Also, Book Your Books app is now available on the Google Play Store, and you can download it and register. Also, we have a literature quiz going on, the link to which will be put up in the chat box. And we have some very exciting prizes for the winners as well. Let's begin with our session, which is very interestingly titled Let's Conceptualize a Murder Mystery. And we have some very amazing people on the panel today. Akash Verma is an entrepreneur and a co founder of two internet startups in the fashion and food sectors. His work has taken him across the country, and he uses this experience to give context to his stories. He has authored three books till now: It Happened That Night, Three Times Loser, and A Broken Man. Prachi Sharma is an author, editor, content developer, award winning short story writer, blogger, and aspiring journalist. She is the author of six published books. Two of her short stories have been contracted and published by Juggernaut Books. Four of her stories have been published in anthologies, and one of her stories was recently accepted in a feminist anthology, and others have appeared in online literary magazines and websites. Samir Kumar is currently pursuing his MBA from IIM Ranchi. He is a mechanical engineer with 3 years of experience as a manager in Tata Steel. He has written two books: The Origin of Martin Kruger and The Murder Before Carnival. He treasures long walks and long rides on motorbikes. Also, he adores the song Smelly Cat, which he has asked me to introduce in his introduction. Tanmay Dubey is the best selling author of four books, out of which are three fiction titles: Just Six Evenings, The Amigos, and The Red Line. And his latest one is called DNA of a Champion Salesperson, which is a self help book. He finds solace in long distance running and has actively participated in more than 25 national and international marathons. He is also an avid cyclist and has successfully completed Ironman Australia Triathlon in May 2019. Shweta Desai is a psychologist turned product manager turned writer. Her love of books comes from her mother, who introduced her to books and opened up a whole new world of imagination and escape. She lives in England with her husband and two children. When she is not writing, mumming, and working, she dabbles in baking, painting, cooking, and reading, and plans on opening a creative nook for others sharing similar interests and hobbies. I, on behalf of the organizers, welcome you all to this panel, and I hope that we have a very, very interesting discussion today. Jumping in, so I have a question to all the panelists. Given that in mystery novels, most of the characters should be relatable to readers, what parameters do you keep in mind while creating them? So anyone can unmute and answer.
So I'll start.
Yeah.
Hi Siddharth, and hello everybody else. So, like you said, the characters should be relatable. So, what since most of my stories currently are based in Bombay, so and I've been living here full time since the last 4 years, and I've been experiencing Bombay in its myriad hues: the traffic, the roadside food, the local trains, the rickshaws, the rains, and everything. So I try to craft characters because as they go about their day, it's a normal day in Mumbai, what a Mumbaiker would feel like. So that when people read it, it's not just that a Mumbaiker is reading it and they are relating to the character. It's also when other people from other parts of India or other parts of the world are reading it, they also feel that, oh, so this is what an ordinary person in a metropolitan city goes through when they go about their day. So, I try to craft such relatable characters, and I feel it's an important part of the story. So that's how I try to, make a character that the reader can sort of relate to. The reader feels that, okay, the reader sees something of them in the character that they're reading.
Right.
Yeah.
Samir, what's your take? Yeah, Shweta, you can go ahead.
Sorry. I think I agree with Prachi. The way she's talking about the Mumbaiker, I talk about things like a working mom, because I'm a working mom, and then the characters that I see in my regular life. So my boss, maybe my husband, my kids, everyone from my life somehow makes way into the books, and that's, I think, the easiest and the most relatable way to get a reader hooked to what you're writing, because they will find maybe not themselves but someone in their life who relates to a character in my book, and that will make it appealable and relatable.
Right. Samir, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually enjoying my time over here listening to everyone. So first of all, thank you so much to Flipping Pages and Bookie Books for giving me this chance. I don't think I deserve this or not, but I was actually enjoying listening to everyone. So yeah, but answering the question, um, character development is a very important part for me, even more than the story development. And the way I develop the characters is that I don't define them from top to bottom. I just like define a few bits and pieces of that person. Like if that person is a sad person, saddest person, lonely person, or what could be his or her favorite breakfast, or would he or she like sunrise, or love to have the drapes on and just relax, a lazy person or very active person. So I just define these small things and I let the person or the character live. And somehow those characters find a way in the novel. So it's that. And it's not that all the characters find their way in novel, but I love developing them. So yeah, that's my take how I do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Akash, your take on this?
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here and thank you, Flipping Pages. Just one small correction. My sixth book is coming out now, so it's not just three books.
Okay.
So two are love stories and four are thrillers slash murder mysteries. Well, it depends. For me, it essentially, who am I talking to? That's my first point when I decide on what kind of characters do I want to write. So if I'm writing a love story, what age group, then obviously I'll pick out characters from my life and they have to be relatable in that sense, which appeals to the people who I'm writing for. But if it's a slightly let's say 35 plus murder mystery, then I would like to write about characters who would fit into that kind of a profile of my customers. So my characters usually depend on. So first, when I'm conceptualizing my story, I think of that with this book, who am I targeting? Who am I wanting to read this book? So that's how my process goes.
Tanmay?
Great. So thanks, guys. So I think I have a 3R formula now for making a book readable or bestseller, if you want to use that word. One is you have to have if your characters are relatable, then people would read your book, and if they read your book, they will refer your book. So once they refer your book, then obviously your book would sell. So yes, relatability, being able to relate, create those characters which you are able to relate is the most important point as a writer. But then the problem starts here is, as Akash was mentioning, who are you talking to? And I would like to take this a little step ahead, that what is the world that you have created in the story that you're talking about, right? Now, if it's a very realistic world, like Shweta said about boss and other Mumbaikar and other stuff, uh, it becomes easy for people to read, and maybe for us to write. But how about if you're writing a science fiction? Then how do you involve your your relatability there. That's where maybe you will have to get into the human emotions part of it. That even if an Iron Man dies in a movie, you feel cried, because then you know for the fact that whatever it is happening, it's not real, but still, because of the power of the writing, because of the power of the characters, you kind of relate to this person at a very, very human level. So while you're crafting a murder mystery, uh, and you're setting up your story in a world of its own, you'll have to be extremely careful, getting that finer relation between me as a reader and you as the character in the book.
Right. So, as I saw, most of you, in fact, all of you, rely on your life experiences to actually draw out your characters. So, has it actually ever happened that you have opened the newspaper, read a headline, and said, "Yes, this is something, this is something that's perfect for a storyline"? Has that ever happened?
Yeah, it has happened for me for sure. The red line which I wrote was in fact inspired by real incidents only, and the way the whole book took shape. It was one headline after the other. 2012 mein kuch pada, then 14, 15, 16, and it just chronologically I just kind of arranged it. So yes, Siddhant, very valid thing. It happens for me for sure. I don't know about others, but it happened for me.
Look, your life experiences in that sense, if you're writing your first book or second book, your life experiences will only take you that far. But how much
Hmm.
can you from your
Yeah.
characters and etc. So you for writing really a good 10, 12, 6, 8, like Prachi said, she has written 6 books, I've also written 6 books. So then your life experiences can only take you that far. Then you have to draw inspirations. Inspirations
Mm.
you can draw from, like Tanmay said, from newspaper articles. For example, I draw my inspirations from books and films personally, and my inspirations. So my last book was a very dark thriller, very, very dark thriller, and you'd be surprised that the inspiration that I got from my book is from a very tender, a very extremely good movie by Gulzar Saab, which is called Ijazat. Okay, and now one would say that ये इजाजत से इतनी dark thriller कैसे निकली? So now I would like to say that inspiration is something like a seed, जिससे जब आप बोते हो तो आपको सीड पता होती है कि आपने सीड बोई है, लेकिन पेड़ कौन सा निकलेगा उसके ऊपर वो आपको नहीं पता होता. So
Hmm.
inspiration, so inspiration can take many folds, can take many forms. Like you said, from newspaper article, you turn up writing a story which is absolutely different, but your inspiration, your source is there. So I look at it like this.
Yeah, I think I agree with Akash because I took the inspiration for the first book in my series from my own life, but I flipped it entirely. Where I have a happy married life, this woman wants to kill her husband. The inspiration is my life, but the point is that you can take your regular experiences and you can flip them on their head because that makes it more interesting. There
Yes.
probably are thousands of books written about people in love and happy married lives and all of that kind of thing. So how do you make it different? How do you um, get a reader hooked onto something that is so regular? Is this woman really actually wants to kill her husband, but she's portraying a really happy life? So you've got to have that conflict and you've got to create something that is interesting, appealing, and then slightly off as well. You
Yeah,
know.
Right.
that's a very important, very, very sorry, I'm just taking that one point. Very important word that she made, that she said, is conflict. You know, so you have to bring that conflict out. As a writer, you cannot take that safe story and keep on writing what you think readers will lie, right? You have to go beyond what you are actually capable of. You have to even shed your own fears, shed your own inhibitions, and actually end up writing characters which you may hate initially when you pick them up.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, so I would like to, yeah.
Prachi, Samir, your take on this?
Well,
So
yeah.
I remember that many years ago I was reading this story in Times of India, and it was pretty gruesome. This man had been found living alone, and I think he was mentally ill or something, and he had been living with three of his family members dead in the same apartment. And this
Hmm.
happened in Mumbai.
Wow.
So he had been bodies were rotting, and he had been living with the same for a long time. For months he had been living with that. So when neighbors reported a foul smell, then the police came and found that this guy's family is dead and he's been living with this for a long time. And he did not even know that I've been living with dead members of my entire family is dead and I've been living with. So one of my novels is a courtroom drama based around a woman who's been living with her uh, dead husband and his lover for a week, and she's accused of murdering them both. And it's a courtroom drama set in LA revolving around her case, that is she the murderer or not.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot of the inspiration for my stories actually one of the stories that is published by Jagannath is based on the fact that in the apartment where I live, the people who live just right above me, I've never seen these people. They live on the 14th floor, and a lot of the time, random sounds come from their house. Very weird sounds, and I don't know who these people are. I don't know what's making these sounds. And I said, let's make this into a story. So that's how it's called The Invisible Neighbors, and that's how that story came out.
Wow, even I'm writing a story like this right now. So
All the way.
my next book that I'm writing exactly, and it's, I won't name the book, but it's a different, but yes, neighbors play a very important role. To this point, to what Prachi said, I remember a Japanese proverb which I had put in my last book. So it says that a human being has three faces. One face is for the outside world, one is for his family and friends, and third is only for himself. So as writers, sometimes we bring out that face which is only meant for ourselves, and those kind of stories we churn out. Like she said, that we are all very different people, like Shweta also mentioned and Tanmay mentioned. We are all very different people. We end up writing stories which are so different from what we are, but then that's truly an artistic freedom. That's truly where where a writer feels so happy.
Right. Samir,
Well,
you're
yeah,
yeah.
like I would differ over here. Like I have a different form. I try to and I like to plan the murders on my own. I try to think of the person who I hate the most and how I would like to kill that person. So yeah, but I'm a huge fan of conspiracy stories. I'll tell you. So the kind of things people craft, they come up with, that this could have happened, or during the world wars, the prince was having an alliance with Hitler. So I love to go through a lot of conspiracy theories, but about murder mysteries, I like to plan them. And for me, news articles, no, they haven't yet influenced me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the research that goes, into crafting a murder mystery novel. So you have to create something, yet it has to seem believable, both in terms of the crime and the investigation that goes into it. So how difficult is it, and how creative does your search history looks like? So the way you want to commit a murder, like Samir mentioned. So how does
Yeah.
that go into the entire process?
See, again, when I wrote when I wrote the Red Line, I had spoken a lot about defense, the Indian defense, international espionage, and other stuff, which were obviously inspired by real thing. But I had to be careful while I was doing research, and I have interviewed few people who had shared some dark secrets with me. So, so that kind of research, I had to be really, really careful whether I should take those names or not. Even if I'm taking some names, should I mask them and tell it differently? So those kind of stories and those kind of subjects, you have to be careful in your research. If you're writing something that maybe Sherlock Holmes kind of story, or the quintessential murder in the Orient Express kind of where it is mostly fictional characters. So then I would say the research is more the nuances of how that murder was done would get into you'll get into that. So again, depending on story to story, your research would matter, and one has to be extremely careful in doing that research. But yes, having said that, research is extremely important, and we all here are matured authors, so everybody would, I'm sure, would understand the importance of a research.
like what I did for my book Murder Before Carnival was that I took the entire course of forensic science and I completed that thing. And like what I do is that before conceptualizing any murder, I feel it's important to understand, how a blood spatter would look like and what information you can get from a blood spatter, or which bullet like how much distance you can fire from. So for that, I did a lot of this, and I have this weird thing. I do a lot of weird stuff, but during my college days, I used to change identities. With a friend of mine, we used to travel a lot to places, just aaj chal jata hai. We saw a movie Yes Man. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Yes Man. And in that movie Yes Man, in the initial phase, Jim Carrey goes to a place, and he learns that you have to say yes to anything and everything that comes to your mind. So I and my friend used to go anywhere, just with this concept of Yes Man. We used to change our characters. We used to change our, a place from where we belong. Like someday I would become a Gujarati. Somewhere I would sometimes I would become a Marathi, and I would talk to people, on buses, on auto rickshaws, on the line of maybe ATM or anywhere, and get a lot of stories. So those are the kind of research work. It's weird, but I've done a lot of things. Yeah, so that's my answer.
I think that's something called creative freedom. So as long as you can make it believable, I think anything goes. So science fiction is essentially writing about stuff that has not happened yet. It's all set in the future. So no one knows what a believable future would look like. 2020 was supposed to have flying cars, but we got COVID instead. So it can be anything, literally, as long as you are able to justify what you're doing, and you can, when you plot your story, if you have filled in all the plot holes, essentially, that why is this character doing something, if there is a justification for it, I think that qualifies as a murder mystery. What Samir is saying is it's a very technical way that he's doing things, but there's an imaginative way, there is a technical way. You will find books with authors like Tess Gerritsen where it is very gruesome, like she can explain a murder crime scene for 5 pages, but
Hmm.
that might appeal to a certain audience, whereas
Yeah.
it may not appeal to a lot of people. But then when I was reading Tess Gerritsen books, I was scared to walk on the road. Like, we used to live in a very small village at that time in Hampshire, and walking on the streets after like 5 o'clock, after it got dark, used to scare me because I was reading her entire series of 13 books, and it just gets darker and more crazy and gruesome. And you know who's doing the murders, you know who's going after this guy who's doing it, you know everything, but she still manages, just with the way she's writing things, to make it that way. So it's different for every author.
Right. So, as you mentioned about the plot, so how important is putting red herrings in a storyline at multiple places to keep the reader hooked? Or sometimes, do you think that red herrings actually move away the writer actually from the story, and people might get bored? So, are there flip sides to it, or are red herrings actually important to the story?
Mm,
Look,
Yeah, anyone.
okay, I'll go first. Look, the way I look at it is whenever, so if you're writing mystery, if you're writing a murder mystery in that sense, or a thriller, the goal that I always keep in mind is you have to take the reader along. Yeah, you have to take the along with you when you're going on this journey. And so if it's a murder, so you know the basic plot, the writer crafts the basic plot in his mind by researching, by thinking through, thinking of characters. This is what I want to do. But what I do then is I plot backwards. So if this is the guy who's the murderer, okay, then how will the backstory go? And in the backstory, where are those twists that I want to put in? Okay. And personally, I try to put in twists where for the reader it is not a revelation but a realization. There is a difference between that. So revelation is something where the end is not very, why it happened is not very plausible, but realization is something, oh shit, I missed it. Yeah, the author said
Okay.
it, but I'm so that kind of a thing I really want to play on. And Finally, for me, a very rich murder mystery, which Agatha Christie did so beautifully, with some of the contemporary thriller writers, psychological thriller writers, and especially women are doing both in UK and in US, is they are writing characters with great backstories. And it's a mix of a pure murder mystery and a psychological thriller. And so I think The Silent Patient, a lot of you would have read, which is the other book that I recently read is The Guest List. Another one I read, which is by Ruth Ware, is called One by One. So there are some great Agatha Christie meets psychological thriller, those
Mm.
kind of writing. Yeah. So they are great, and they actually contain everything. So for me, it's kind of a combination of all these factors.
Yeah. I
Right.
think it's layers. You can't have a murder has happened and someone's going to find the killer and, put them in jail. That's just really bland. So you've got to
Yeah.
have layers. You've got to have people with lots of different kinds of intentions that would want to make this crime happen. And then there's
Yes.
one person who's actually done it. So
Yes.
it's
Tanmay made a very
investigation.
Tanmay, yeah. Tanmay named a very good murder mystery, Murder on the Orient Express.
Orient Express. Yeah.
It's all the people inside a train and
Hmm.
one person died. But in the end, all of us would have seen that. It's such a rich, poignant, and an emotional backstory,
Hmm.
which makes the journey so enjoyable. At the end, you come out remembering that book for a long time, and that is the beauty of that is the beauty, like you said, of a good murder mystery writer is. So there is a murder that has happened and one guy solved it, so that's where the story ends. But after solving that murder, what stayed with me throughout for next 1 month, 15 days, 20 days, that's the beauty of the backstories and the emotional undercurrent that you're saying it is.
Hmm.
So,
Right.
I generally tend to write, I have not written whodunits as of now. I tend to write thrillers. My novels are more thrillers than mysteries. So, my novels, the crux of my books is more behavior and psychology than, you know, read any. I feel that because having read both thrillers and murder mysteries, because I've been first I was an Enid Blyton fan, then I've been an Agatha Christie and Conan Doyle fan since I was a kid, and now of course I'm reading all the recent and modern crime writers. So I feel that red herrings belong more in a whodunit, a proper whodunit or a murder mystery like the Orient Express or others. But what I feel is that what I write is thrillers, and I'm not a plotter, I'm a pantser. So for me, the plot develops organically. So, and whenever I write a I write a thriller, it's about keeping the psychology of the thriller in mind. What's this person going of the killer, of the detective, of the other characters involved in the plot? What are they going to do next? So I am a more more of a thriller person. So red herrings are no, you will not find a lot of red herrings in my stories. It's more of the behavioral psychology of the characters involved and why people kill and why other people, you know, find killers and where do the lines blur in between these. It's more
Right.
about
Look, in that sense of Prachi, red herrings, as he said, are also plotted by the mind. And as it is said, that it is the mind that commits the murder and it's the body that gets the punishment. Okay, so ultimately, all these are plottings of the mind in that sense. So yes, I completely agree with you. Since you study so much of behavioral science, I'm sure, and all of us try to do that in whatever limited sense. But yes, in a murder mystery, the mind is, like you mentioned, is actually extremely important to know the psyche of the character, all the characters in the book, even for, in that sense, even of the murderer, the guy who actually commits the murder, isn't it? It's so important,
Right.
because it can't be that just because B was having a problem because of finances, because of A, he murdered A. It can't be as simple as that. Those stories won't work in today's time. So, like it was mentioned earlier also, that to knowing the mind, I think is most important. Yeah.
Right. So
I
we
for
have,
sure
yeah.
I'm a self-confessed fan of red herring. I love doing that. I do it again and again, and that my Bollywood upbringing just won't let me stop using this red herring again. So I'm a fan of it, and I use it wherever I can.
Look, it's a page
And
turner.
yeah,
It's a given thing. It's a page immediately shifts the mind of the guy who's reading it. वो सोचने लगता है अच्छा ये नहीं अभी तक तो मैं ये सोच रहा था शायद ये हो that kind of a thing क्योंकि अब ये चीज सामने आ गई. But yes, so I'm just saying you have to when you're writing page murder mysteries you have to make the person keep turning on the pages. If his interest drops, your book goes away. As it is, so fewer people, like it was said at the start of the conversation, someone mentioned that who is writing murder mysteries these days. There was something someone said. As it is, reading books is so much more important.
Is
Tough
yes.
times,
Right.
so much of OTT, so many options, and people don't really want to read books. Lack of the
So
education level, and all of that. So
as writers, we have to fight with the crap whatever WhatsApp offers to the people. So
if
Right.
I
Point.
So
have to,
I will take a quick comment from Samir also.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I was about to get in. Well, see, when I write, see, it's not that just one person or two-person is the focus of my work. There are simultaneously, you know, five, six stories that are going on because I believe that it's not just the protagonist or the person he or she is related to, but there are other stories that are also going on around. Like if I'm talking to you, if we are having this particular session, then there's something else happening around the world. So even that is somehow included in my work, and that indirectly becomes a sort of red herring, but I try to keep it interesting and relevant. So yeah, that is how I do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, since we have less than 2 minutes left before Zoom throws us all out of the meeting, I would like to know your favorite murder mystery that you would have read, and then we can like close the session. So one by one, and you can just tell the audience.
my favorite is Murder in the Orient Express.
My favorite is any book by Tess Gerritsen. Google her; she's an amazing author. All books written by her are just amazing.
I would say the novel The Alienist. I'm loving it so far. I'm a slow reader, so I'm still reading it, but I love the concept and I love that novel. Yeah.
So mine
Prachi,
is sorry. Mine is anything by Kigo Higashino. So
ah,
he
I'm
Akash.
reading his I'm reading his book the second time these days. No, for me there are no favorite. I very quickly forget. But one of the yeah. So, but for this year for 2020, 2021 has just started. My best book in that sense was has to be Silent Patient. I really loved that book.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
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 So, thank you guys. Thank you, Shweta, Sameer, Akash, Prachi, and Tanmay for joining us for this session. It was a very wonderful session talking to you about murder mysteries and how you conceptualize it. And thank you, Flipping Pages and Book Your Books, for giving me this opportunity to moderate this wonderful panel. Thank you all. Thank you for joining, and it was a great session. Do join us for the next session, which is starting in the next 10 minutes, and the details will be there in the chat. Thank
Thank
you all.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you,
Nice,
everyone.
nice meeting you all. Bye bye.
Nice
Take
meeting
care.
you.
bye
Same here. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye bye.